Next on the news, Pope Francis getting ready to embark on a historic visit to Canada to apologize to the country's Indigenous people on their own soil. Plus,
and there's only one option.
A man accused of attacking a Republican gubernatorial candidate during a campaign rally. And a record number of crossings at the southern border, what the bishops of Texas are calling for. Also,
it's like I have a front row seat to all the good things that are happening all around us.
We'll speak with Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan as he celebrates a major milestone. I'm Christine Persichetti. This special edition of Currents News starts right now. Pope Francis performing a familiar personal tradition on Friday ahead of a trip, praying before an image of Our Lady at the Basilica of St. Mary Major, entrusting his visit to Canada to the Blessed Mother. The Holy Father departs on Sunday, and he's calling his visit to the country a penitential pilgrimage. Francis plans to apologize to the Indigenous people on their own soil for the abuses suffered by children in residential schools run by the church. Justin McClellan has a preview of the trip.
In April, 4 delegations from Canada's Indigenous communities traveled to the Vatican to tell the highest levels of the Church about the historic effects of the abuses inflicted on their peoples in residential schools, and hear Pope Francis speak these words.
Per la deplorevole condotta di quei membri della Chiesa Cattolica chiedo perdono a Dio e vorrei dirvi di tutto cuore sono molto addolorato. E mi unisco ai fratelli vescovi canadesi nel chiedervi scusa.
Now, the Pope is returning the visit with a 6-day trip to Canada, where he will meet again with Indigenous groups on their native lands.
For Pope Francis to come to Canada and provide that apology to more survivors and give those survivors a little bit more, support down their pathway for healing, if that's what they need, that's very important.
The Pope will visit the cities of Edmonton and Quebec, as well as native lands so remote that he will go to the edge of the Arctic Circle. Yet Indigenous communities are hoping for more than just apologies from the Pope.
We also are hoping for more commitment to action. Some of those include reparations for Métis residential school survivors, because that has never taken place. We need unfettered access to all church records.
Among the requests is that Indigenous artwork housed in the Vatican museums be returned to Canada. The Vatican maintains that they were gifts from Indigenous peoples, but has not closed the door on returning certain items. Breaking from standard procedure, Pope Francis's first stop will not be with his destination country's political leaders. He will meet with Indigenous groups first, before meeting with Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Wednesday. The agenda reflects the Pope's characterization of the journey as a penitential pilgrimage.
That was Justin McClellan reporting. This is the first papal visit to Canada in 2 decades. As the Pope is poised to apologize to Canada's Indigenous people, the Catholic Church there has already begun healing efforts. Bishops in Canada have begun payouts to the communities through a special reconciliation fund to support and advance healing initiatives. The Canadian Bishops' Conference has pledged $30 million over the next 5 years. Already, nearly $5 million have been collected. Ahead of the Pope's trip, let's look at the religious makeup of Canada. The country is 55% Christian, according to a 2018 Pew Research survey, with the majority Catholic at 29% and 18% Protestant. About 29% have no organized religion, identifying as atheist, agnostic, or, quote, nothing in particular. For even more in-depth coverage of the Pope's trip and the Catholic Church in Canada, be sure to tune into Currents News on Monday. We'll also be updating you as the Holy Father takes off this weekend. Just be sure to follow Currents News and the tablet online. More than 82 million Americans from coast to coast are on alert as the nation's unrelenting heat wave pushes on. In New York, highs in the 90s are expected to persist well into the start of next week. Meanwhile, the city's electrical grid is already showing signs of strain. This after thousands experienced blackouts Thursday, mostly in the Bronx and parts of Queens. With these dangerous temperatures, public health officials are warning people to take measures to prevent heat stress. The condition leads to potentially serious and even deadly heat illnesses. Mandy Gaither has more on what the heat can do to your body and your mind.
It's a heat wave of massive proportions.
It's much cooler down here when you get out here early. If you wait until about 12 o'clock, you can forget about it.
As temperatures rise, so do risk factors. The stifling heat can affect your body and mind.
The combination of high temperature and high humidity creates the right condition for a heat emergency.
Two of the most common heat-related conditions are heat stroke and heat exhaustion. With heat stroke, the body can't cool itself. A person with heat stroke may sweat profusely or not at all. They can become confused or pass out and could also have a seizure. Heat exhaustion happens when the body loses too much water or salt through excessive sweating. Symptoms include nausea, dizziness, irritability, thirst, headache, and elevated body temperature.
If somebody notices that in somebody that they're in the heat with, they need to take action right away and seek help.
Extreme high temperatures can also put significant strain on the heart or make breathing more difficult. Studies have shown that exposure to extreme heat can also contribute to mental health issues, problems for pregnant women, and poor birth outcomes. To stay safe, stay out of the heat as much as possible.
You just need to take frequent breaks, you need to hydrate, and you need to decrease the intensity of your workload or your workout.
I'm Mandy Gaither.
If you're looking for a place to cool off, Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens can help you out in a big way. A number of their senior centers also serve as cooling centers. Just head online to ccbq.org/senior-centers to find one near you. Or you can call them at 718-722-6001. The Republican candidate running for New York governor attacked on stage at a campaign rally just outside Rochester.
And there's only one option.
Police say a man with a sharp blade jumped up on stage and moved in on Congressman Lee Zeldin, saying, "You're done." Zeldin then grabbed the man's wrist before he was subdued. The candidate wasn't hurt. The suspect, David Jacobonis, was charged with assault but was later released on his own recognizance. President Biden's COVID symptoms have improved just a day after taking the antiviral drug Paxlovid, that's according to the White House physician. The president is self-isolating at the White House and is working from home. He still participated remotely in several key meetings on Friday, and a top advisor says he's had mild symptoms from the start.
The symptoms were basically the same. Again, he's got a little runny nose. He's got a bit of a dry cough.
President Biden is fully vaccinated against COVID and even has received 2 booster shots. A House committee held a hearing on Tuesday about the impact of the reversal of Roe. While there were 5 pro-abortion witnesses testifying on behalf of legalizing abortion on demand, there was just a single pro-life witness. Dr. Christina Francis, a practicing OBGYN who's a pro-life advocate, had this to say.
With the advancements in medical technology and understanding over the last 49 years, it is now undisputed fact that at the moment of fertilization, a distinct, living, and whole human being comes into existence.
Dr. Francis went on to testify about several issues, including the medical risks women face if they obtain abortion pills without an in-person doctor's appointment. Pro-life leaders knew all along that even after Roe was overturned, the battle for life was just beginning. And this week, there were new developments from West Virginia to Mississippi and beyond.
Hell no, we don't need Roe!
It's been almost a month since Roe v. Wade was overturned, and now there's a new development for the Mississippi abortion clinic at the center of the Supreme Court case. The so-called Pink House was challenging a 2018 state law that bans most abortions after 15 weeks. Now the building is closed and under contract to be sold.
It's not surprising, honestly, because I figured that somebody would try to get it on out of there as soon as possible, with people not really taking well to the overturning.
In a case that could very well go to the high court, a West Virginia judge blocked enforcement of the state's 150-year-old abortion ban on Monday. The ban makes abortion punishable by up to a decade in prison. The judge granted the state's only abortion provider a preliminary injunction, finding multiple conflicts and blocking the law's enforcement with a special concern.
Especially those who are impregnated as a result of a rape or incest are already suffering irreparable harm in the absence of an injunction, Defendants will suffer no injury from this injunction that it has not suffered for the prior half-century of non-enforcement.
But Catholics are fighting back against pro-abortion laws and policies. The Catholic Medical Association now condemning a letter sent by Health and Human Services forcing providers to perform abortions under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. The co-chair of the association's ethics committee saying Catholic healthcare agencies and providers have managed these same health crises of mother and baby consistent with EMTALA law and best practices over the decades, while respecting the health and dignity of both. The owner of the Pink House says she plans to open a new clinic in New Mexico over the next week. Following Roe's overturning, a monthly peaceful march for life in Manhattan has turned into a confrontation with disruptive protesters. Every first Saturday of the month, Old St. Pat's Cathedral holds a Witness for Life Mass, followed by a procession to a nearby Planned Parenthood where they recite the Rosary. But hundreds of pro-abortion protesters tried to block the march from the Lower Manhattan Church, pushing back police who were trying to help the pro-lifers pray. But the church's pastor, Father Brian Graby, says he isn't worried about his parishioners' safety.
I've never felt personally threatened. The people are very aggressive, screaming in our face and so forth. But thank God to this point there hasn't been any physical violence to speak of. I mean, they'll push and shove us a bit, but those who from our parish who participate in this mass and procession, they've been doing this for a very long time, and they know how things unfold, and anyone who feels uncomfortable or feels that they might not be able to maintain a peaceful presence remains in the church for Eucharistic adoration while the procession takes place.
Father Graby says the church does have a permit for the procession. If you want to join the faithful at Old St. Pat's, their next Witness for Life event will be on August 6th at 8 a.m. There's a lot more news headed your way. Another surge in migrants at the southern border. Next, what the Texas bishops are calling for to make sure more tragedies don't happen. And better devote more time if you're planning a trip to Europe. We'll get a firsthand account of how rough the air travel could be.
There are now some big changes to the tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
There's a migrant surge at the southern border, and Catholic bishops are trying to get ahead of it. A report by Customs and Border Protection found officers encountered just over 200,000 migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border in June alone. That's more than any other June on record. In light of this, Catholic bishops in Texas are calling for immigration reform. They say it's necessary to prevent what happened to the 53 migrants who died inside a trailer in San Antonio from happening again.
The law has to change. As we entrust our deceased brothers and sisters to God's merciful embrace, we are all called to work to ensure that this tragedy must prevent others.
Speaking on behalf of the Texas Catholic Conference of Bishops, San Antonio Archbishop Gustavo Garcia Siller says last month's tragic incident could have been prevented, and that U.S. bishops have been campaigning for common sense immigration laws for years. With this recent surge, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has ramped up his efforts to bus migrants from the border to the nation's capital. And aid groups in Washington, D.C. say they've been struggling to keep up. Now they're calling on both the city and the federal government to take responsibility and provide more resources. To date, there have been more than 5,000 migrants bused to the nation's capital since April. Long wait times, cancellations, and disruptions. People all over the globe are facing unprecedented levels of air travel chaos this summer. And to see just how difficult it can be, Anna Stewart takes us through London's busiest airport as she travels from the UK to Spain.
Long lines, delays, and cancellations. Travel in Europe has never felt so chaotic.
One of the best ways to really show you the issues is to take you for a trip. We are going to go through one of the worst disrupted airports in the world and to one of the busiest holiday destinations. We're going to Ibiza, Spain.
And we were quickly confronted with challenge number 1. We're too early. And we're not the only ones. Once bag check-in opens, this is the queue.
Now, my advice would normally be don't check in a bag this summer unless you really have to. But out of curiosity, we're going to check one in anyway. And actually, I'm going to put a GPS tracker in it so we can see where it gets to.
Tracking the bag is a good idea, particularly through Heathrow. A shortage in baggage handlers has resulted in scenes like this. Mountains of lost luggage. Bye-bye suitcase, hope to see you in Ibiza. If the queue for check-in looked bad, look at this.
This queue is going all the way from security, it's snaking all the way around, and then it's going all the way back down the airport's entranceway to the far corner.
Any flights departing within 1 hour.
Ooh, that's us.
I'm fast-tracked through. It's getting too close to departure. So no time for a shop, a rush to the gate, only to find it's delayed. But a couple of gates down, there's a flight delayed by a lot more. 14 hours. These girls and many others slept here at the airport.
My children is sleeping on the floor. He's feel cold. My children, yeah, it's really bad. Me, yeah, I'm tired as well.
This couple's flight woes started even earlier.
My flight started in Dublin 2 days ago, and my first flight got cancelled. And then I started my flight yesterday to London, the second one, and now this one got cancelled also. And now I'm here, and I hope today I will leave the country.
Are you ever traveling again?
Not to the UK.
I made it onto the plane. It was an hour delayed, but that seems small fry compared to others. And amazingly, even my bag made it.
Hey!
Of course, it could all go wrong when I go back home. Maybe I should just stay here.
That was Anna Stewart reporting. Several airlines say they were unable to prepare for the travel rebound due to COVID restrictions. But several governments say the fault falls on the industry, especially after receiving government subsidies to make it through the pandemic. One of the nation's oldest Catholic newspapers is closing. The Portland-based Catholic Sentinel and its Spanish counterpart, El Centinela, are closing October 1st, citing new directions in church media and hundreds of thousands of dollars in annual cost savings. The papers are the official publication of the Archdiocese of Portland. The Catholic Sentinel has been in publication since 1870. Still to come on Currents News, Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan celebrating a big milestone. We'll hear from him when we come back. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. That face kneeling to the left looked familiar. That's now Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan being ordained as an auxiliary bishop of Rockville Center. It was almost a decade ago that he began his ministry as a bishop. And Bishop Brennan will celebrate the milestone anniversary with his faithful flock on Monday on the Feast of St. James with Mass at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James in downtown Brooklyn. More on that in a moment, but first, let's hear from Bishop Brennan as he reflects on that day that started his journey to being the shepherd of the Diocese of Brooklyn.
I just remembered being surrounded by so many wonderful people who were there. And even one of the moments was when, as with any ordination, you lay on the floor during the litany of the saints. I really had a sense of that communion of saints, certainly the saints whose names were being called, but a lot of people who I've known through the years who are in heaven. And so I felt a certain closeness to a lot of people, both there in the cathedral and in that communion of saints.
Wow, what an experience. What's the biggest thing you've learned in your 10 years as a bishop?
I'm just overwhelmed by the goodness of people and the way people manage such heavy burdens and do so with great faith, with tremendous hope and love, and it shows itself in different ways, but the same lesson keeps coming through.
And you spend a lot of time with the people, so I would assume that's a good part of the job. But tell me, what's the best part of your job as bishop, and what would you say is the hardest part?
You're on to something there. It is the best part of the job is being able to be there among people. It's like I have a front row seat to all the good things that are happening all around us, and it's always inspiring. The difficult part of the job, man, I wish I could answer every need. I wish I could provide for every situation, and sometimes we just have to make choices, and you do so trying to do the best you can with what you have and work with people and accomplish what's possible. And I wish I could do some more. So that would probably be the greatest challenge.
All right, you were born in the Bronx, raised on Long Island. Did you ever imagine you would be Bishop of Brooklyn?
No, I haven't. I couldn't imagine that. Born in the Bronx, I feel that city connection. My father was a police officer in Queens, so I certainly spent a lot of my young life in Queens, more than in Brooklyn. My father comes from Brooklyn, and I spent a good time in Brooklyn, but no, I never thought that. When I was in the seminary, I knew Brooklyn priest. I thought Brooklyn was another world, and I didn't see it. And even some of the great cultural things, like the Mount Carmel feast, or the crossing the Brooklyn Bridge on Good Friday. Those were things I had always read about. And I said, oh, I'd love one day to see it. Never did I imagine I'd be riding on the Giglio or leading the walk across the Brooklyn Bridge on Good Friday. And that experience just happens to me over and over and over again. Things I had heard about, things I had imagined. It's just amazing to think that not only am I living it now, but I have the great honor, the great privilege to be able sometimes to lead these things.
Yep, best city in the world. All right, now let's take a look forward. What are your goals for the next 10 years?
Well, my next 10 years, I'm looking to really continue to build on all of the good that's been here. You know, I've discovered, and I give Bishop Damasio a lot of credit, but I give the people of the diocese, the priests and the religious and the deacons and all the people of the diocese, such credit for so much good that happens here every single day. This is a great diocese, and it has a great legacy, but that legacy isn't a historical, you know, put it in a museum kind of legacy. It's a living faith. So I guess my goal for the next 10 years, this is a long answer to your question, the next 10 years is really trying to build on that, to continue to learn and to build on the expression of faith that's so amazing here.
That was Brooklyn Bishop Robert Brennan. You could watch more of my interview with Bishop Brennan online. Just log on to currentsny.tv. And Bishop Brennan's official 10th anniversary is this Monday, July 25th. As we mentioned, the bishop will celebrate that milestone during a mass for the Feast of St. James at the Cathedral Basilica of St. James in Brooklyn. You can watch that mass live at noon right here on Net TV. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.